Right. Right. In other words, saying there's a certain discomfort with the idea. I hear you. So here's the question. But based on what you're saying, the person comes in his debut. He says he's a person who goes with the ways of a navi. As far as we can tell, he seems to be legitimate. And then he says, Hashem spoke to me, and you have to go paint your house clean. And here's the sign. The sign is that the halach is you have to listen to him.
Yeah. Okay.
What if and let's say
Torah.
Oh, 1 second. Now a navi who the halach is on today's perek. If he tells you to today, do malach on Shabbos, you have to listen to him.
Right.
Now. Here's the question: what if his debut nevuah is a nevuah to not do a mitzvah today? Listen to that. So the Rambam's lashon in the two prakim ches and tes seems to be contradiction, and the Mefarshim have a fun time with this. So we'll touch upon it today. Hilchos Yesodei Hatorah perek tes. So perek ches was yeah, but the Rambam is trying to be the Mefarshim. We don't know what his intention was. So perek ches was that there's a concept of nevuah. And Zayin and Ches, right? You have to listen to a navi, etc. Perek tes. Okay, says the Rambam. Continuing to define the guidelines of when you do and don't listen to a navi. It's very clear and explicit in the Torah. That the Torah is a commandment that is eternal for all eternity. And this is one of the 13 principles of faith according to the Rambam. The Torah has no change, no diminishing. Sorry, excuse me, I skipped. It doesn't have any dominion. Related to Sefes or in addition, it says, the entire matter I command you. You have to guard to do it. The entire Torah and forever. Don't add to it, don't detract from it. So the Torah and the mitzvahs are eternal. There are certain things the Torah tells us that are not eternal. The war with Midian was a temporary mitzvah.
What?
The war with Midian, the chiyuv to paint your doorpost with the blood of the carbon Pesach. But the mitzvahs Moshe gave on Har Sinai that he told us are forever, those mitzvahs are forever, and there's no exceptions. And then it says, another pasuk, the revealed matters are to us and to our children forever. Is called to do the matters of all the words of this entire Torah, so it's eternal. So you see, we learn, all the words of the Torah, were commanded to do them forever. They have no expiration date. Now the Rebbe has a sikha about the whole concept when it says, "But mitzvahs are batal," and what does that mean? And that's a whole conversation. But okay, I don't know the sikha ever actually. So, okay, all right. So, v'chein similio. Another pasuk is chukas elam adelim, chukas elam de'sechem, a eternal statute for your generations. That one brings this pasuk last because that actually only specifies certain mitzvahs, not all mitzvahs. But okay. Now the Rambam is not v'nemer le'ba shemayim. It's not in shemayim. What's the Rambam's point? So the one way of understanding it is there's not a part of the Torah that's remained in Shemayim that Moshe did not tell us yet. And then another is going to come and say, now I'm going to complete the Torah. Hashem told me, here's the elusive 614th mitzvah. That's not...
These two guys came to Nebuchadnezzar. One said that they have to have relations with his wife or something.
Okay, not familiar with this one?
And he said, he told her. She went to her father. Said, respect this,
this is in Sefer Daniel?
I guess, yeah.
Interesting, I don't remember.
And he said, if you that doesn't sound right.
Basically, he exposed him as false.
And he said, well, let's see if they're we're going to throw them in the fire if they come out.
Oh,
they're good. Because you see that the other people come out. And they said, but we want to have but we need 3. I think they took the nil also.
That was that story? I don't okay.
And his cook that was dead. They asked how come they got burned in Johnson. His cook. And they said, then how come everybody else came out? Everyone else, Avram and everyone else went through this. Came out, why were you called burned? Because I was stuck with these 2 mamzerim with me.
I see. So therefore it impacted him. Yeah. Okay.
You ever heard that?
No, I learned Sefer Daniel once. I just don't remember this story. Yeah. Okay. Because Loi B'Shamayim, no part has remained in the Shemayim. Alternatively, you could say Pshat Ram with the words Loi B'Shamayim. Is that the Rambam is a hakdama to what he's going to say now. The Navi is not allowed to use his nevuah to tell you what the halach is, which is what we're going to say now. All right. As we'll see in a second, right, exactly. Yeah, Navi can. If we have not sure what the halach is, right? The machlokes between the chachamim. Navi says, and everyone's giving rayas back and forth. Navi says, Hashem told me that they're right and you're wrong, right? So we'll see in a second what that means. So we see Navi's not allowed to bring something new, meaning add to the Torah, subtract to the Torah. The fichah, therefore, if a man arises, whether it's from Jews or from non-Jews, Bavarans and non-Jews, apparently the Rambam holds the concept of nevuah could exist by a non-Jew. Now we see very clearly by Bilam, by Lavan, by Avimelech had nevuah. But apparently, the Rambam is going to say. So let's hang on a second. He's going to say if a Navi says to change the Torah, you don't listen to him, Jew or non-Jew. What if he says paint your house green? A non-Jewish Navi must you listen to him? So it's not clear. You could say the answer is yes, but it could be the answer also could be no. It could be that you're not going to listen to a non-Jewish Navi regardless. Okay, but that's a conversation. But certainly, if he tells if he asks this Navi gets up and he says again, Jew or non-Jew, right? And the Navi says. And the Navi says, Hashem sent him. Mitzvah to add a mitzvah to the Torah. Or do a mitzvah to take away a mitzvah from now on. There's no more mitzvah, right? Or the farish mitzvah, mitzvah is perish or now I'm not taking away a mitzvah. There is still a mitzvah of taking a beautiful fruit on Sukkot. However, Hashem told me that from now on it's a cucumber. No longer a mitzvah, right? Okay. So that's also considered. That's one another example. He's saying, Hashem came to say those mitzvahs only temporary. The Rambam is taking a swipe over here at Christianity, right? That was the taina. So that is a false navi. He's coming to contradict the prophecy of Moshe. That after a certain point, it's no longer obligated to do these things. Right, no longer. All you have to do is believe in him. Right, so that Rambam is saying that's a fundamental contradiction to Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, I'm telling us the whole chiyuv to listen to a navi comes from the fact there's a mitzvah to follow the Torah Moshe Rabbeinu. Right. So therefore, if he's coming to contradict the Moshe Nevuah, by default, it's false, and therefore he gets the punishment of a false navi, which is misasa b'chenek. He has to be strangled. That he was deliberately speaking in the name of Hashem false. That's what Hashem did not command him. Now, how do you know? Maybe what if the guy says, listen, I don't know what to tell you. Hashem told me to say this, and what should I do? I should not say my nevuah? Right. So, poor guy, why are we killing him?
You're obligated to say it.
Yeah. So the word is, we know he's lying. Hashem would not tell him such a thing, right? Okay. Now, and let's remember, by the way, this would not apply to any of us over here who says that Hashem told me to tell you that you're not mechuyev to keep Shabbos anymore. You're not mechuyev, you're not chayav chenek because you're not shaykh to be an Navi Emes. You have to first be the caliber who is an Navi Emes. That you're not involved in physicality and theoretically you're mechuyev to listen to him so he said a true nevuah. And since he says a false nevuah, he must be mechuyev. But Stama Nutnik gets up and he says, whatever he says, he's not chayav chenek.
You throw tomatoes at him.
Exactly. Otherwise, if a lot of people on the street corners, you have to start killing. All right. Hashem commanded to Moshe Rabbeinu, and we know this is true because we saw Moshe Rabbeinu receive the prophecy from Hashem, like Ram said in the previous parak, that the mitzvah is for us and our children is for all eternity. Right? The pasuk says in the Devar that Hashem is not a man to be false, to be trickerous, and therefore Hashem would not go back on his word. All right. So, affected Am Halacha Beis. 1 second. Yeah. So we know all the Torah mitzvahs already, and then we know why Moshe Rabbeinu was a navi. There's a reason why he was a navi. So we should know it's true. What's the purpose of having any more neviim? Affected Am King. That's true. Why does the Torah say navi? A navi, Hashem says, I will raise up for you from among your brothers like Moshe Rabbeinu. I'll give my word in his mouth. He's going to speak to them whatever I command him. What's the purpose? We already know the Torah mitzvahs already.
What are you the prophet? Why can't you just have a magi?
Exactly. What's the purpose of nevuah? Right. So the Am says, he's not coming to change anything about the religion, right? He's coming to command you and inspire you to keep the Torah. To inspire people not to transgress it. Even though we already heard of Moshe Rabbeinu, but if someone else says, Hashem told me to, hello, remember, don't forget, exactly, the last one of them, not the last one in history, the word of the Nevi'im after Chag is the Chayim Malachi, as discussed in many places, but the last one in Tanakh per se, what did he say? Nothing new. He just says, Zichru Teres Moshe Avdi. Remember Moshe's Torah. That's all he came to tell. The fact that he does a sign, when Hashem spoke to him, reminds us, inspires us that even though we weren't by Har Sinai, our ancestors were, but it renews the enthusiasm. That's the purpose of a Navi. That's purpose and primary purpose number one, just to encourage us to keep Torah mitzvahs. Similarly, justification number two for Nevi'im. Navi gives you a command regarding something which is not Torah related. For example, the Chulma complaint, go to this place. And it's not a matter of doing a mitzvah or adding a mitzvah. Like a mitzvah, it's just a davar rishus. Don't go to this place. Make war today. It's not mechames mitzvah. Do not do this war, right? That's more a necessity. You want to know if Hashem will give us hatzlacha, right? They ask the Ram B'tumah sometimes. You build this wall. Don't build this wall. Dam could be referencing the wall of Yerushalayim with the Nevi'im we're telling them about over there in Ezra Nehemiah. Mitzvah Shmuel in that case is a mitzvah. Not just you're allowed to, but there's a mitzvah, a law of Tishmu. And not only, and he says paint your house green, you have to paint your house green. The Rambam is mashma. And the Foshim Lim Shat Rambam, he has to tell you, Koyamar Hashem. Hashem told me to tell you, Ishtambazay says to you, go paint your house green, and we know he's a Navi. So do you have to listen to him? So actually, some Rishonim hold, I think most Rishonim hold the answer is yes. Rambam holds the answer apparently is no. All right. In other words, there's an importance of prefacing the rule with Koyamar Hashem. But again, Tosfos says before it's not like that, and that's important to know because. Right. Okay. The person transgresses his word. Navi says, paint your house green, you paint your house blue. Chayiv misab de shemayim. For transgressing the commandment of a Navi, the person's chayiv misab de shemayim. Now, so again, some say this is dafka if he's a Navi who's already established as a Navi. Remember, we learned that a Navi who was shaykh to be Navi comes with his debut Nevuah, you have to listen to. That was Perek Zion. And Perek Ches also, I think. So does that apply to when he tells you something about Rishus? The answer is for sure yes. He says, Shenemet says, V'hoya ish. How do we know a person who transgresses and doesn't listen to a Navi is chayiv misa b'dei shemayim? Because it says, V'hoya ish asher lo yishma'al divrei. The man who will not listen to my words, ashidav b'shmi, that he speaks in my name, this prophet, anechi edosh mima, I'll demand for him, meaning I'm going to punish him. And then that's how we know that a person who does not listen to a Navi is chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Okay. So this is the mitzvah of obeying a Navi. Halacha Gimel. Similarly. Another way of transgressing what the Navi says is Navi Sha'ava. Yeah, Navi Sha'ava Deviyatzim. If Navi transgresses his own words.
You do it, but I'm not going to do it.
So he says, Hashem told me to tell you, it's one thing. If he says, Hashem told me to tell everyone must do it, but he himself doesn't do it. Or Hashem tells the Navi, go to this place, and Navi ignores him. The question about Yoina, Hashem told Yoina to go to Nineveh, so this is exactly what that was. How come he wasn't Chai Misa? It's a question. Or Navi simply, Hashem tells him to tell someone something. He doesn't say it. He keeps it to himself. Chayiv misa d'shemaim. Again, he's chayiv misa d'shemaim. Ubeshlosh, in all three cases, if a person disobeys the Navi, if a Navi disobeys what Hashem tells him to do, or a Navi who keeps his nevuah to himself instead of saying it out, remember it says the pasuk, I'll demand from him. You could learn the Mefarshim say you can read the pasuk instead of saying Asher lo yishma, the one who will not listen. You could read it Yashmiya, the one who will not make it heard. I mean, the Navi will not tell the other person.
That you wouldn't know. He doesn't tell anybody.
Correct, but then and Ma'aseh Shehoyim in Tanakh, with that Navi who was a false Navi, the Navi who didn't listen to Hashem, and the lion came and killed him because he did not say over the roof. I forgot who it was. Okay, I'm now going back to what he said before. Who needs Nevi'im? So we said two reasons: to inspire us to keep Torah mitzvahs, and to give you instructions in matters of rishus. Similarly, another case we need Nevi'im is not matters of rishus, talking Torah mitzvahs, even though a Navi is not allowed to change the Torah. If a Navi tells us, we know he's a Navi. Now, why the Rambam adds those words is interesting. We'll talk about it in a second. We call mitzvahs to transgress one of the mitzvahs. Hamuz, to mention the Torah, mitzvahs or many mitzvahs in Torah. As long as it's not the big three, as long as it's not a Avodah Zarah, excuse me. No, it's not a Avodah Zarah. Bein kalas bein chamuz, whether it's a light mitzvah, severe mitzvah, which l'chera means but it's a chiv kares, not a chiv kares. Lefisha temporarily mitzvah l'shma. There's not just a permission. There's an obligation to obey him. The Navi says to you, go light a fire on Shabbos.
Yeah, don't put on film today.
Right, and you go and put on tefillin today. Big problem. That's a chiv. You're trying. That's chiv chenek. You're transgressing the Navi.
Says tomorrow you can put it on.
This is what you learned. This is usually Ram just says Mipiyashmua. Here he says Cham Harishenim Piyashmua. Interesting. I'm not sure why he says that. Okay. So how we learn from the early Chacham, meaning from the Tanaim, by tradition, the Chayil Ner Melcha Navi Aval Deviteda. In everything, the Navi tells you to transgress the Torah. Kaliyah Bar Karma is an example to be Eliyahu on Mount Carmel, who offered a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash, which Ram does is based on Mechira. In Hilchas, Hilchas. Not based on elsewhere in the Sefer Avodah, that's not allowed. It's chiv kares. Shema lo obey him. Chutz Avodah Zarah. Avodah Zarah is the exception. That we don't listen to him. Good. Now the words around Shnei Navi, we know he's a Navi. You could say, simply speaking, that he's an established Navi, and he tells you not to put on tefillin today. You don't put on tefillin today. If it's his first debut Nevuah, then you don't listen to him. Or you can say pshat no, that we know he's a Navi, and he tells you transgress the Torah. You obviously have to listen to him. And if he gives you a Dvar Rishus, you also must listen to him. If he's a Navi who, sorry, I forgot. There's a way to learn Pshat over here that even if it's a debut Nevuah, you still would listen to him. Okay, that's the actually Moshe has a shuv about this. Whether how you learn Pshat. Okay? Moshe Feinstein. Yeah. Okay. So let's keep it simple. Let's see. We're talking about established Navi. Actually, the Alam in Pirush HaMishnah is very. He uses a lashon that a Navi who's famous like Shmuel or Eliyahu. That's when he listened to him. So the Alam seems to be saying that's at least unless he's retracting over here. Yeah. It has to be somebody who's already has what's the word? Credentials, established credentials. Okay, so then you must listen to him.
He has ID.
Exactly right. He's smicha for nevuah. So then you have to listen to him. Okay, good. Who provided?
Which makes more sense.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It makes more sense if you think about the severity of the matter. But it's very interesting to say Reuven and Shimon are both Nevi'im. If either of them tells you paint your house green and you paint the house opposite color, you chayv misa. But if one of them tells you don't put on tefillin, you disobey, with him you chayv, with him you're not. That's a little funny. Yeah. That's a little funny. So the lashon, so it makes sense in terms of the comfortability, but the concept is a little still strange. Okay, but who provides you? Yeah, right. No, so that's a good question. Does a goy who can apparently go to Ram can become a navi? Is there a chiyuv to listen to him? Right. It's a good question. It's not so posh. The first want to say that if you disobey him, you should not chayiv misa. Could be your way from the. All right. Oh. Yeah. In other words, if he tells you to transgress the Torah, he's chayiv misa. If he tells you a dvar shus, you're not mechuyev to listen to him. Interesting enough. Even though he has the get of a navi as being chayiv misa, if he's roy, I guess this person who you see even a guy, he's like if he's very involved in shav mitzvahs, he learns shayach hazamunah, right? Because a guy can learn that, and he's okay, good. Right. Oh no! So the we're talking about nevuah from Hashem. So here's a question: all the things that Rambam tells us to do to nevuah, you're not involved in physicality. You're constantly thinking about Hashem's oneness. Right. He sounds like he's saying it applies to all humans. Yeah. But it has to be someone who's involved in these Torah. If he's thinking about Buddhism, it wouldn't be a navi. I'll be Torah, right? It has to be someone who is like a nevuah means you see his whole life is achdus Hashem. Is thinking about Hashem. That's how.
Okay. So maybe you might think this is a thing, and you see that he does miracles.
No, so that doesn't mean he's a davi. It has to be dafka nevuah. He has to be somebody you see his whole koch is kedusha. But who provided she yadav fisha? It has to be temporary. What's the problem with that? Yerushalayim was chosen as the eternal place for offering karbanos, as Rambam tells us in Sefer Avodah. Essentially, the rule is a person offers a carbon outside the Beis Hamikdash once Yerushalayim is chosen. Right? There were times you could offer a carbon wherever you wanted. Everyone had their own bum in the backyard. Everyone had their own shtibel. But after Yerushalayim was chosen for all eternity, there's nowhere else you could.
Still have your shtibel, but you can't offer a carbon.
Right? To replace you, Navi, because Navi mitzvah shema, it's a mitzvah to obey him. Begam bezer nemer, regardless the pasuk says, Elav Tishmun. So we have Elav Tishmun. So Elav Tishmun applies to the different rishus. It applies to Divrei mitzvah, if it's a matter, it's only temporary, fine. And again, here it's a little puzzling to say, yeah, but that's only if he's an established Navi. If he's not an established Navi, then a lot of Tishma only applies to the Rishus, not to the mitzvah aspect. All right. The Ilu shall say, now if you ask, right, and he told him, Lord, how could the Torah says, where it says, be careful, unless you offer a carbon any place you see, right? Only where Hashem says you're allowed to. Say, he would respond, loy, but you says just loy, or loy ella hamakriv, loy amru, some good loy nema ella hamakriv. Okay, so here the Greek says loy ella hamakriv v'chutz. But same point. It only applies to someone who's makriv outside the Beis Hamikdash. Lo olam chayav kares meshtiv Moshe. It's only if a person says that from now on forever. No, that's where you're just doing it because even if it's only one time, the point you're doing it based on your own idea. Or a Navi says, do it eternally. I'm already outside, that I'm at B'dvar Hashem. The Mepharshim said that he has to, Hashem told him to do this, and he has to give a reason. To disprove the false prophet of the Baal. So the Mepharshim want to explain that means that the Navi has to justify why Hashem is telling him to uproot. Don't put on something. Why not? Because, okay, good. Yeah, but no, for what reason? That's what he wants to say. That's what the Mepharshim want to say over here.
He has to say that.
then he has to explain the reason. Okay. Similarly, if any prophet commands Lava to transgress temporarily, it's mitzvah to command them. I wonder if when they did not fast Yom Kippur, when the Beis Hamikdash dedication was finished, was that based on the Nevuah? Because the Rambam tells us in Hilchos Mamrim that the Sanhedrin without Nevuah has the right to do that. The Sanhedrin also has the right to suspend Torah temporarily. So I'm not sure which method they used. What if the Navi says?
How many times did they really Nevi'im who told us to go against?
Well, for everybody, Eliyahu was, I think, one of the only times. Well, there was a time Hashem told Yecheskel that even though his wife's going to pass away, you should not do the mitzvahs of Oinin and Avelus, right? What else? Moshe Rabbeinu killed without Edis, right? Moshe. Well, yeah, okay. Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeshua ben Nun killed Achim without Edim when he took from the spoils of Yericho. There was no Edim, right? What else? I don't remember. That's a few minutes in
past that time, how many did in history where they told you to do something against the Torah?
I don't know, but it doesn't have to be. It wasn't recorded. It could be your next video was a Navi, and it's not, most of the prophecies were never recorded in Tanakh. Only the ones. So I don't know. The answer is I don't know. All right. So as long as he says it's, so if he says it's forever, no longer mitzvah tefillin, he saw some mechanik. He's chayiv strangulation. The Torah says, "Lo nevadenu mitzvah us al children for eternity." Halacha Dalet. Similarly, another example of a Navi who would be exposed as a false Navi. If he wants to uproot something we learn by tradition, it's an example. For example, we know by Kabbalah that Priyat Hadar is an esrog, and he wants to say that Hashem told me pshat.
Yeah.
Is an apple, right? Exactly. Yeah. He says, if Allah is very plain, in other words, if you have machlekes and based on the principles of psak, we don't know how to paskin, and he tells, or I guess, sorry, let me just make it more easy. If we repeat the principles of psak, for example, the majority say one way, and the minority say differently. He says that Hashem told me the minority is right, so he's telling us to contradict the principles of halacha, of Piskei Halacha. He's a Navi Sheker, he's a false prophet, obviously, he's chayav strangulation, alphapisha, also ice, even though he made a sign, and we said Hashem gives Navi a sign. He did a sign. Here's the sign. He's coming to translate the Torah, which means if that's down meant when he said it earlier, it means the pshat is not like I said before, that it's, the only thing part of the Torah is not given. The point is that it's given down to humans to use human logic to the principles of Torah, obviously, to pass. Now, what happens if we don't know how to pass? There is no clear cloud. Then can Navi clarify? Oh, so then it's not so simple. So there's a baskel.
Even without being in Navi, the Moshe can pass it.
Oh, so that's not so simple. So the Mepharshim talk about that, right? If the Navi is not, for example, if we don't know how to paskin, because the principles of the Torah don't tell us clearly. For example, in this case of Bisham Beis Hillel, they weren't sure how to paskin. Then the baskel said, "Locha is Beis Hillel." Whoever heard the baskel, why would you pay attention to them? It's a nevuah, right? The answer is since he wasn't trying to contradict the principles of Psal. It's just clarify because we weren't sure.
Only clarify in our world for right now.
No, that was for eternity. Yeah, no, it's Sanhedrin. If they, that's another story. But that's what's the source of that, by the way? That it's a Mikdash Melech on the Zohar. I'm saying it's not. It's a nice word, but okay. The word is the majority of Sanhedrin will see Beis Shammai's perspective. Okay. The question before I should discuss, what if he's not going to change halacha? For example, this woman's in a gun. Her husband disappeared. If an aide comes and says, I saw him die, we believe him, right? What if a Navi, I'm not going to say halacha, I'm telling you Metzias, Hashem told me the guy is dead. I'm saying a nevuah, Hashem told me. Is that considered paskin al pi nevuah? This, I bought 2 pieces of meat, and they got mixed up. One's kosher, one's treif. I don't know. Got to throw them both out. Says a Navi, that one's kosher, that one's treif. Is that considered paskin al pi nevuah? So the first one discussed it. There's the move to say no. Because it's not a psak. I'm just telling you Metzias, right? Okay, good. Fine. However, temporarily, if he tells you temporarily, if you know that they listen to him. What is true? Yeah, fine. Yeah, fine. When is it true? B'sham mitzvah. This is all true if it's every mitzvah, but not avodah zarah. If it's idolatry and shem le'afilu fisha, even for one moment to worship idols, you don't listen to him. Afilu also maybe he makes great signs. He makes the sun rise in the west, set in the east. Hashem said to worship avodah zarah today, just today, or just to this hour. Hashem, he's speaking falsely against Hashem. The pasuk says that there's a boys on Mephis. Even if that sign comes to be that Hashem tells you, the guy says go worship other gods. Who do not listen to that Navi or that dreamer. He speaks falsely against Hashem your God. Because he is coming to contradict the Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu. Therefore, it's certain that he's a false prophet. Obviously, whatever he did, by making the sun rise in the west, that is whatever it is, he's doing with Balot, which means like the word Balot apparently has to do with shaded. And kishuf and witchcraft, and therefore he has a standard procedure of being a false navi, which is he's chayiv through misa through strangulation.
Okay.
I was in Brazil, and I wrote about this whole sugya about when the navi